Welcome to Toronto Sports Rush. I'm Kyle, joined by EJ Hradek. EJ, it has begun. The first big move of the Toronto Maple Leafs offseason has dropped. They send Joseph Woll and Simon Benoit to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Samuel Ersson, I believe his last name's pronounced,
Yeah.
and Emile Andre, and a 2026 third-round pick. How do you feel about this trade?
Well, it was kind of one of those ones you have to think about for a little while. I think just to kind of put it all together. I mean, Joseph Woll is kind of the biggest name in all this, right? And he was thought of as being the Leafs goaltender of the future. But when you think about his time in Toronto, for me, he just wasn't available enough. At key times, he was hurt or he had personal issues, and that's really those things are unfortunate. But if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs moving forward, can you rely on that? And I just think that they've decided that, he's a 3.6 against the cap. They can move him out. They've got some younger goalies in their system. The Marlies are playing so well right now in the American League Calder Cup final, up 2-0 and the goaltender there, the young kid there, is playing really well. So, for me, I think that's the thinking is we can afford to move Wall. We got Dennis Hildeby, who is someone who played well this year, and he does not have the ability to put him on waivers, so you would probably lose him. So maybe you start the season with Stolars and Hildeby. You have the kid who's playing well in the minors ready and maybe ready to come up and has the ability maybe to come up and come down depending on his status. So, I think that makes sense. I don't really love trading Benoit at 27 years old. He's got one more year on a very reasonable contract, and he's a guy that provides some physicality at 6'4". And if you held on to him, even if things didn't go well this year, you could move him at the deadline probably for something maybe more significant. But at the end of the day, they make this happen. Emile Andre is a player I saw play in junior hockey. He's played some in the NHL. And he's only 5'9". He's a smaller guy. He's not dynamic, but he's a battler. So we'll see where he fits in. He's an RFA. The same thing with Samuel Ersson in goal. He's had some ups and downs as a goaltender in Philadelphia, but he's an RFA, and who knows what the plans are for him. So at the end of the day, it creates cap room, which is what the Toronto Maple Leafs probably are looking for here to create some flexibility for their team and gives them an extra draft pick if they want to, either use that pick or move it somewhere along the way. So, to me, it's an interesting move, but I'm not surprised that they moved one of the goalies, and Joe Woll is the guy he was the most likely guy to move because Stolar's contract kicking in next year, a little bit older. I think Woll was a guy that was more interesting to teams like the Flyers.
Yeah, and John Chayka actually just did a press conference right before you and I connected on here, and he did talk about the organizational depth in net that this team has. And we were talking just before we taped here. An argument could be made that Hilda B and Artur Akhtamov are actually the best two or goaltenders in this organization right now, and they've received a lot of high level experience now with this Marlies team. They could both be ready to move to the NHL sooner rather than later on a full time basis.
Yeah, Akhtamov has really ended up being the guy, right, in the
Yeah.
American League playoffs. Looking at his numbers here, 13-6, 924 save percentage, 221 goals against average. Those are some pretty significant numbers for him. He's 24 years old. He'll be 25 in October. He's someone he got a little bit of a look last year down the stretch. I remember his first game against the Islanders. In the first period, I think the Islanders had like 450 shots on goal. I mean, it was some kind of crazy. It probably was more around 26, 25 or 26, but it was a lot. And I can even remember Jeff O'Neill. They had the game on TSN, and Jeff O'Neill wondering why he was high-fiving his teammates after the first period. He was laughing. He said, I would have gone Ron Hextall on these guys. So, he had a little bit of a look. That's, behind a bad Leafs team at the end of the year. Hard to know what that means. But what you can take from is in important spots here in the Calder Cup playoffs. He has taken that job, really, and played more than Hildeby and been really important in the final. So, we'll see where it goes, but I think that is the future and goal for the Leafs right now, those younger guys. Even Stolars, he's there now. He's on a 4-year deal. Love Anthony Stolars. Hope he can stay healthy. If he can be a really, a good veteran around those other two guys as they move forward. But I'm not surprised there. I like I said, you hate to lose. I don't like to lose 6'4" defensemen, but, it's the price you're paying. And, John Shaika, the other thing I was told about him, he's for whatever reason, he's more open to smaller defensemen. I think, you look at the teams that win; they have bigger, longer, rangier guys. But maybe this is one of those moves where you make the move. These guys are not particular pieces down the road. They're just pieces that get moved around as you're trying. You have a bigger plan in mind, so we'll see what happens.
Some of the other things Shaka said in his address to the media was that they like this move because it helps them create flexibility and optionality, citing cap space, roster flexibility, and draft capital that can be used this year or traded.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I know talking to guys that work for him in Arizona, they said John Shaika likes to make trades. He makes a lot of trades. So I talked to one guy this morning. He said, "I'm not surprised at all that he makes a deal right out of the Stanley Cup final." He goes, "Expect more to come." He likes to make trades, and I think Toronto needs to shake up their organization anyway. So I mean, we'll see. It's a bigger plan, right, Kyle? You mentioned it's a bigger picture. So we watch this today. It makes sense to. I think you had to move a goalie. You move Wall. You save some money there. We'll see what the other moves are going to be down the road. At the end of the day, putting together a championship team is a big puzzle, and there are all pieces, and some are bigger than others. So he makes a move today, creates some space. We'll see what else he's going to do moving forward. But the good news is they're having success at the AHL level. I know it's a lot of veterans that are leading that, Logan Shaw and Vinny Lettieri. But there's some good, the goaltender has played really, really well. So that's positive. The kid Villanov is not that old of a guy as a right shot defenseman, has 19 points in the postseason. I mean, I think he was a 2020 draft pick as well as the goaltender. So, who knows, how these players move forward. And also the head coach down there, John Gruden. Let's keep an eye on him. I mean, they're up 2-0. They won 2 games on the road. They have a chance to win the Calder Cup. Maybe it's John Gruden's time to get a chance to coach in the National Hockey League. Maybe he's a guy that they will opt to move up into that role. We saw Dan Hughes, for example, have a lot of success last year moving up and taking the job in Pittsburgh. I think they have similar resumes. So we'll see what that all means. But it's good to have winning in your organization. It helps kind of jumpstart some things for players. We'll see where it goes.
And EJ, we're going to stay with that line of speculation because I absolutely love speculation here on Toronto Sports Rush because John was also asked about the Marlies in his press conference, and he did specifically state the popularity of this team and, sorry, not the popularity, but the run that they are on.
Yeah.
And he mentioned Gruden's name. He mentioned a lot of both the senior players and the young guys getting these reps at a higher level, the goaltender specifically. And then he concluded the press conference asked about the coaching decision, and he states that they are in the final phase of hiring a new coach. There have been some in-person meetings recently, and a decision should be made within several days.
Well, listen, he can go down the road with a guy like Bruce Cassidy, who is available. I mean, John Tortorella is now available again after the Vegas Golden Knights opted not to bring him back. So those are two really high-profile names for sure. There are others. The Jay Woodcroft is another guy that was out in Anaheim as an assistant coach. He's been in Edmonton as a head coach. So there's a lot of those type of guys that they could go towards. But I'm interested about the John Gruden thing is interesting to me because I know he was in Arizona. I don't know if his time overlapped during his time there with John Shaika or not. I'm not sure of that, but I think he's someone that would be interesting. I don't think you would have to spend a ton of money in terms of having him there. This Toronto team this year, we don't know what to expect. Are they, they're retooling? It's a new management group. Maybe he would be maybe he'd be a really good fit for this particular situation. He's one of those younger guys in the American League. So, we'll see what happens and what direction they want to go. But I will say one thing so far about this whole thing, going back to the very start when they moved on from the manager, they've moved on from the coach. I don't think we know what to expect, Kyle, right? Because I don't think anybody thought John Chaito was going to be the general manager of the Leafs and Matt Sundin would be involved. So I think it is, from that standpoint, it's going to be fascinating to watch to see what they do. But John Gruden is an interesting name, and I think they could do a lot worse than elevating him and making him the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And there is something to be said. I mean, with a franchise that's as prominent as this one, there is something to be said with the organizational familiarity that he would bring. It's just less of a step in. He's already so familiar with the guys who could come up. He's so familiar with the league above, the league up from them, the management structure there. It it could be a better situation to have him hit the ground running. Like, I'm not suggesting he's the right or wrong choice, but there is some positive to hiring from within.
Yeah, I think so because I mentioned, that the Villeneuve kid, Danforth is down there, and you're still working on figuring out where he fits into this thing going forward. But one thing we know, Kyle, for sure, they need to retool that defense. It needs to be younger. It needs to be faster. I don't know exactly. You move around pieces, so you've got an opportunity maybe to spend a little bit more money, or make trades. But that defense is the biggest thing that needed to be retooled. Now, oddly enough, they moved Benoit, who is still relatively young, and I thought was a good player for them back there. But that's the area. If they're going to get better quickly, they've got some really good forwards, as we know, with Matthews and Nylander and Nyes and Tavares, and you go on. But really, the area that has to be better, and they have to be able to deliver the puck up the ice, is that group of defensemen. It has to be, as I mentioned, younger and faster. And so we will see where it goes from here. But, going back to Gruden, I just think that he's familiar with some of the guys they have in that system that could be part of that moving forward. And it's a fresh face behind the bench in the National Hockey League that would be as a head coach. He's been an assistant coach in the league. So I'll be, like I said, I think with this current situation in Toronto, I think anything is kind of possible right now. And that's the fun part, I think. As someone who covers it, like today, I didn't get up this morning think that Joe Wall was going to be moved out of there. I thought, they're going to make a goalie change at some point, but I didn't think this would be the day or this would be the deal, quite frankly. I mean, I don't know if Urson or Andre figure in any of their plans. They're both RFAs. So, we'll see what Shaika decides to do with them.
Well, we also knew too that one of those goaltenders was going to end up on the waiver wire, so there was the opportunity to move
Yeah.
Wall through that as well too. So you couldn't keep them all off of there. Before I let you go, I want to quickly talk about John Tortorella. Tortorella. Just 48 hours after the Stanley Cup Final ended, he's announced that he is not returning to the Las Vegas team. Is there any real surprise with that, or was that the expected move?
Well, it's not any surprise for me. I mean, having covered the Cup final and being out there and just kind of being around the Vegas Golden Knights organization and, kind of getting a sense of things. I think obviously if they win the Stanley Cup, that might be different. I didn't think he coached particularly well in game during the Cup final. I didn't like the putting together Stone, Marner, Eichel, three right shots that didn't appear to have any chemistry in those, last couple of games when they needed to generate offense. But, let's face it, Carolina at the end of that series, the last five periods really took over the series. And, that's a good, strong team in Carolina. They're six deep on defense. They got 12 forwards. I mean, the lines are really nicely mapped out. And they made the change in goal, and Bussy came in and played really well in goal. So it just was lights out for the Vegas Golden Knights. But I'll be curious to see what this means for Tortorella. I know this much, Kyle. He wants to coach. Coaches always want to coach. He's going to be 68 years old. I don't think he looks great. He's got a lot of kind of vim and vigor about himself. So I think he's going to coach again in this league. I think he certainly upped his value with his performance down the stretch for Vegas, getting them righted, getting them in the playoffs. I think that, and having this run to the Cup final, I think the best thing he did is he realized that he didn't have to do a lot in terms of changing to systems. And, he just kind of got those guys believing in themselves again. And so I'll be curious to see. I mean, there's been so much noise about the Edmonton situation with first Bruce Cassidy and now Mike Babcock. We'll see how that plays out. I think it would be really fascinating if the Vegas Golden Knights block Cassidy from going. They cannot block Tortorella. They don't have that contractual leverage. So if John Tortorella would somehow end up in the mix in Edmonton, I think that would be kind of a fascinating story to cover for sure. But I think there's a good chance he's going to coach somewhere based on how things went, in the playoffs. And I would think that in Toronto they want to at least talk to him. I don't know if he's, like I said, necessarily the right fit, but I think he did did a really good job getting into the final. I didn't love the in game, some of the in game moves in the final, but you're limited when William Karlsson, your number two center, gets hurt, and that changes the dynamic of things.
Question about the Cassidy situation. Is there any chance, in your opinion, that the Las Vegas team that they blocked people's ability to talk to him because they knew Tortorella was leaving, and that would kind of put a bit of a freeze on the coaching market, and they knew they would have to they themselves enter that and look for a new coach, and they wanted more to pick from?
Well, I think that the Vegas Golden Knights want to elevate their American League coach, Ryan Craig. He has been someone that's been close with Kelly McCrimmon, going all the way back to their time together in the Western Hockey League. As far as I think Ryan was a player for one of Kelly's teams. He has been part of the Vegas Golden Knights organization from the start. He has been an assistant coach in Vegas for different, believe it was three different coaches. He was on the bench as an assistant when they won in 2023. He's been coaching the American League with Henderson now. So I think that was the plan all along, to elevate Ryan Craig. I think if they had won the cup with Tortorella, that might have changed that a little bit. There was some thinking maybe they would bring Craig back as an associate coach under Torts as kind of a mentorship thing. But I think he's been through all that. I mean, he's been an assistant coach for Cassidy when they won the cup. He was been an assistant coach for, I think, Pete DeBoer, and for also Gerard Gallant. So I think that's going to be the move in Vegas, and I don't think it's going to take too much time for them to elevate Ryan Craig to the head coaching position. I do not think they will ever give Bruce Cassidy the permission to coach the Edmonton Oilers. I think there's some bad blood there because of the fact that story was leaked during the playoffs, and I don't think that Kelly McCrimmon and Bill Foley and that group in Vegas was too thrilled about that. So I do think that if Bruce were to be offered the Leafs job, I think that would be, he's obviously had the ability to talk. I think the teams in the East, they don't want to pay him to do nothing. They just don't want to pay him to coach a rival in the West. I think they saw that with Pete DeBoer when he went to Dallas. So we'll see where things go from there. But I think Vegas is going to hire Ryan Craig as their head coach, and I don't think it's going to take too much longer.
All right, EJ. Thanks for all of that. I'm certain this will not be the last time I'll be speaking with you this offseason, because I agree with you. I mean, this guy wants to come in here and make a splash. It's a pretty good start. I think there's some very big positives to this move, and again, it all relates to flexibility and optionality, as he said himself
Yeah.
in the press conference. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you soon on Toronto Sports Rush.